Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. This is episode 1 of Crunch Time Crossover. I'll be your host. My name is Isaac. Both of my socials are at OverEasyIsaac on both Instagram and Twitter, so please reach out if you have anything to say or any comments or recommendations. I would love to hear them. First and foremost, I would like to thank both David and Anthony for being here, encouraging me and allowing me to have an opportunity like this, to have a platform to just talk about things that I enjoy as well as things that matter to me. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. So the purpose of this podcast, I definitely want to cover a lot of basketball in here. I think that's something that I enjoy. And I think that with what is going on in the world right now, we could use something to keep our mind off of certain things. And with that being said, also use this platform to take advantage of just being mindful of yourself and others around you. You know, I think we can definitely learn a lot from each other. And I think a good way to do that is just talk about it and have a conversation. I think the way I'm going to start these podcasts is with just a couple affirmations every day. So first affirmations, you know, you're lucky to be alive. You're blessed to be alive. It was a beautiful day today. It'll be a beautiful day tomorrow, you know. 1% better, I believe, is always a good goal to have. So I think striving to be 1% every day is ultimately a good goal. You know, you do that every day. It's 365%, you know, those are good numbers, favorable numbers. So yeah, we'll keep that going every day. And I think throughout the podcast as well. But like I said, basketball oriented. So I think it's time to talk a little basketball. One of my first things that I'm interested in talking about is definitely those reigning champs, the Los Angeles Lakers. I think coming off a chip so far, free agency has done them the best. I think they've made a lot of really good signs, adding a lot of really good bench additions while also losing a lot of bench pieces as well. But I think that's just kind of the way basketball works. I think Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder at both those guard and forward positions are pretty vital to a team, especially losing at least 6 or 7 players off their bench. On the other side, in LA with Clippers losing some depth off their bench, it'll be a little interesting seeing how they recover with Serge Ibaka filling that role at that power forward position. I think I had mentioned in my just thoughts that I had the fact that 2 of the superstars in LA on the Clipper side have been pretty quiet is a little issue. As far as opinions go that matter to a team, I think those are 2 players that need to contribute to the well-being of their team, and I don't think they have. So I think that's really interesting for LA. But there's going to be a lot of good things going on in the West specifically. I think there's going to be a lot of good talent moving in and out. I think Portland this year, who also did really well in the bubble, has made a lot of really good offseason additions. Re-signing Carmelo is a big-time re-sign. Grabbing some depth at guard position from Miami is a good pick, and Dennis Jones Jr. They got Robert Covington out of Houston, which is a good 3-and-D player. So there's just a lot of weapons. I think Dame and CJ are going to do well with having some help more often than not, especially late in those postseason games where you get tired, you know, and I don't think Dame and CJ were tired, but I think they could have used a little bit more in some of those late games, segueing into playoffs. To go to the East, a team that I'm really interested in, Atlanta. I think the Hawks have made some pretty big, maybe not team-changing signs as of right now, but I think over time those signings that they have are going to be very beneficial to their team. I think Trae Young's going to do very well having a young core with him being a young player, and with the depth that they added Rondo, which is championship caliber, understanding sweetens that Atlanta Hawk team a little bit. A lot of young talent on that team as well in the forward position, at guard position. Bogey getting that big contract is nice. John Collins at power forward is going to be a good power forward to develop. So I think Atlanta is going to have a really good run this year in the East. Not to say that there's not a lot of competition, but I think I can already see at least 4 or 5 teams that are clear cut in the East as far as making it to the playoffs. Boston being one of them, getting Jason Tatum, that max extension is really nice. Signing a big, not a big name center in Tristan Thompson, but a championship caliber center to some degree. Definitely helps with some late game, you know, hurries and thoughts and all that. They have really good guard play as well. I think they got Jeff Teague, which is a good sign. You know, I think they have a lot of rotation going in, and I think having a deep bench as far as rotating goes that with, forgive me, a lot of players that do a lot of the same thing, really will help out a team ultimately. So I think Boston's going to be pretty much where they were last season. I'm interested in to see how Miami bounces back after winning the finals. I don't think they've really signed anybody super big, so it'll be really interesting to see what they decide to do going forward. There were talks about Giannis making his way over there, but I don't see that happening. So hopefully they can get a little bit of, they should, at least in my opinion, they should have a little bit of more attention, just being the team that came off of a championship run. You know, it's pretty surprising that they haven't done too much for that offense that they have that's available. Not talking too much about the draft, but I think a team that drafted really well that's going to do more impressive than I thought is going to be Golden State. I don't think Oubre is a bad pickup losing Klay Thompson. I think that, not to say it's a big man oriented league, but I think big men always do well. And I think it's proven, you know, the Lakers winning a chip did that with some great big men. You know, you had LeBron playing a 4, Davis playing a 5, and rotated out a lot of big men realistically. So I think having Stephen Curry with a reliable big man, potentially generational big man, you know, is really going to change up a lot of Golden State's play. And as once they get Klay Thompson back, you're looking at a pretty nice couple years, in my opinion. Pretty comfortable couple years. Realistically, I just think the West overall just not does better as far as free agency goes, but it seems like there's more of a market on the West. So I think that's why it seems like there's a lot of big name, or not big name, but a lot of moves that are happening in the West comparatively to the East as far as talent going and signing and getting traded. I think a team this year in the East that I'm excited to see is the Brooklyn Nets. KD and Kyrie being healthy is no fun on the defensive matchup. And I think they have a young team that's already proven that they can do well without those players going a couple years back. So it'll be interesting to see them get a run. I mean, KD could be up for a third ring realistically if they decide to play well. So that'll be really interesting to see happen. To step back from the player to player specifically, I think this league has not necessarily transcended the way basketball works, but I think narratives behind teams have changed. I remember in the beginning of free agency, there was conversation of James Harden joining the Brooklyn Nets and just kind of calling that the season over at that point. And I think that's interesting idea of what a super team is, right? And I don't think that I believe every team is going to be a super team to some degree, but I think with all the talent that's around, you know, players can definitely develop into being these all-star athletes and making big impacts, you know, and I think people want to see big names play with big names. I think back then it was just, you knew a name associated with a team and that's who you saw play and you know who was on the roster. But I think now you're kind of looking and waiting to see who goes where, and you want to see who joins up with who, and you can see who wants to do well with who, you know. And I think, you know, I had spoken off recording with Anthony about the caliber of player is really important too. And I think that always warrants the reaction, you know, but it'll be interesting. You know, the conversation of Giannis going somewhere else to join someone big is very enticing. You know, that sounds like a super team to me, in my opinion, you know. The talks of Giannis potentially heading to LA would potentially be one of the biggest super teams to grace NBA basketball, you know, but it could happen, you know, the way signings and drafts work, you know, if players take certain contracts, you know, things can definitely happen. So I think Giannis's story right now is developing, and we'll see where that goes in the future. I mean, he definitely makes or breaks a championship team. It's just clear that he can't do it by himself in Milwaukee, unfortunately. But yeah, you know, I think basketball's been doing really well so far. I think I'm not too familiar on the direction for next season as far as the bubble being used. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if postseason came around and they opted back into a bubble scenario for the postseason, just because I realistically think it wasn't that bad, you know. And I think I had spoken just in conversations here and there about, you know, the bubble for the league being one of the most successful things to happen during COVID. I think Adam Silver is due a lot of credit for putting together what he did with not only the amount of time he had, but with the amount of people he had to take care of, with the amount of conversations he had to have. I think the bubble was probably one of the most successful things that we'd see happen during COVID, unfortunately. But still, you know, I think with that being said, I know going into next season that the league is going to be in good hands. I think you have a organization that has a pretty good understanding of each other. There's a fundamental respect between players that's obvious, coaches, and then obviously your commissioner that allows for things to do well. And clearly Adam Silver allowed for that to do well because it did go well, had a successful postseason. Well, technically end of regular season, full postseason on top of a whole draft, done via cam, it's pretty impressive in my opinion. So I think I'm excited to see the direction of basketball for the rest of this year. But ultimately, for the generations coming up, I think we have a lot of talent that we've seen come in and out, especially in the drafts that are coming up and just the potential of players doing so well. I think this draft specifically, there was a couple names that we can think of that we're looking forward to, obviously LaMelo being one of the generational talents we're thinking of. Like I had mentioned, James Wiseman at center is one of those generational talents. I think Anthony Edwards is a generational athlete. So it'll be interesting to see if he can stay or become a talented basketball player, because I don't think they are the same thing, unfortunately. I think for this podcast that I'm doing, I think this is the direction that's going to continue to head. I think as basketball comes up, we'll stay in touch. I'll continue to keep some updates going on my socials. I'll start posting some things, getting content out there just as best as I can, Like I said, with my socials at Over Easy Isaac on both Twitter and Instagram, please reach out to me. If you have questions, comments, any recommendations, honestly, I am open to hearing them. Again, with a platform like this, it's foolish to not make use of it, in my opinion, especially if it's something that I enjoy, but not only that, but something that I think, as far as mindfulness goes, that everyone could use here and then, is definitely something that I'm taking pretty seriously. So yeah, I think that's, episode 1. I don't know how long that is as far as conversation goes, but we're going to keep it moving. Again, I think episode 1 drops on Wednesday. That is December 2nd. So you'll be hearing this, and I've already talked about this. So please reach out to me about any questions that you have once you hear this. I would love any feedback, any critique. My ears are open. Again, like I had started, I would just want to really thank Anthony and David again. You guys, thank you very much. The platform is great. You guys are great. I think there's something potentially here that is going to be great. I think it just takes some time, and I'm looking forward to spending some time. But again, my name is Isaac. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys very much. I'll hear you, or you'll hear me next week. Okay. Here. Later.